Good morning, welcome. My name's Michael Chait. I'm the president of the Greater Atlantic City Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the State of the Regional panel discussion. Your presence here underscores our collective dedication to shaping a prosperous future for our entire region. Before we begin, I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to our Chamber of Commerce board members. Your tireless efforts and strategic guidance are instrumental in driving our mission forward. If our board members can just raise their hand or so see who they are, a round of applause for them. Thank you all for coming. I want to thank our sponsors today, TD Bank, Atlantic Care, Atlantic City Electric, Stockton University, Town Square Media. Generous support has made this crucial dialogue possible. As we navigate the complex economic landscape before us, your commitment to our community is more vital than ever. Before we dive into our panel discussion, I'd like to invite up Greg Bell. He will provide some welcoming remarks. Greg is not only the branch manager for TD Bank in Galloway, but he's also the treasurer of the chamber. Greg, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure being a sponsor for the chamber. We've been a sponsor for the chamber over 20 plus years. It's a great organization we're always happy to be a part of. TD Bank is also happy to be a sponsor for in the community. 7-day banking, all of our small business lending and commercial lending for all your lending needs. And also, when Mike asked me to be the treasurer, I think my arm almost got broke. But it really is. When I first came in here to be a member of the chamber, when I was asked, to be a part of the chamber is also a really great thing, because not just to come to all the events and all the mixers, but to be really a part of the board, the chamber, and just to get involved is one thing I can ask you to do. If you're not involved, just coming to the meetings, come look at the chamber, see what it has to offer, and be a part of it. Don't just come to little things. But the chamber is a wonderful thing. Once we all keep growing, that's the way we can keep this chamber strong and keep the region strong. It's not just Atlantic City. It is an actual regional chamber of commerce. And TD is a wonderful time. It's great to be a part of that also. Thank you very much.
I almost feel like I sponsored Greg instead of him sponsoring the event. That was great. Well, no, thank you, Greg, for the kind comments. But today we find ourselves at a critical juncture. Atlantic City, Atlantic County have long been cornerstones of New Jersey's tourism and hospitality sectors. According to the 2023 New Jersey Tourism Report produced by Tourism Economics, our region accounted for 18.8% of New Jersey's day visitor volume and 16.3% of overnight visitor volume. It's for the entire state. Tourism activity generated $868 million in state and local tax revenue and supported nearly 71,000 jobs. That's a staggering 38.5% of total employment in Atlantic County. These figures underscore our region's vital economic importance. However, we face some new challenges, particularly with New York's recent embrace of downtown casino expansion. While Atlantic City has long been the East Coast premier gaming destination, the development necessitates a thoughtful recalibration of our economic strategies. We must leverage our strengths, diversify our offerings, and innovate to ensure continued growth and competitiveness. Our goal is not to just maintain these impressive economic contributions, but to expand them in the face of increasing regional competition. This critical moment calls for strategic thinking and a collaborative action to protect and grow the substantial economic impact our region provides. Today's discussion will be instrumental in charting a course that builds on our successes while adapting and learning the challenges of our landscape of the gaming and tourism industries. We're privileged, absolutely privileged, to have an exceptional panel of experts who will help us dissect these challenges and identify innovative solutions. I kindly ask that you just hold your applause until everyone has been introduced, at which point we can show our collective appreciation for this impressive group. Eric Brophy, Deputy Chief of Staff for Economic Growth, State of New Jersey. Incredible insights. Been a great resource for the chamber and for our region. Always takes the call. Has been an enormous help, and I thank you for that, Eric. Dr. Oliver Cooke from Stockton University, whose astute analysis of our regional economy will provide context for the changes we're experiencing and pathways forward. Christina Fuentes, she's who I call when I need to vent. She is the Managing Director of Community Development at the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Christina's extensive experience in place-based initiatives and small business support will be invaluable to today's discussion. Bill Noonan, welcome Bill. This is his first time participating in one of our panels. He's from Choose New Jersey, whose expertise in attracting business to our state will inform our strategies for economic diversification and growth. Ryo Tashiro, outreach economist with the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. His deep understanding of labor economics and demographics will help us address workforce challenges and opportunities in our evolving market. And guiding this critical conversation today will be our moderator. This is his second time moderating our panel, Matt Fazelpoor. He's a seasoned journalist from NJ Biz. His expertise in business reporting and his keen interest in our region will ensure our dialogue remains both informative and conversational as we explore actionable items, forward-thinking solutions for our region. So please welcome our guests and our panelists today. Thank you. Matt, all right. Yours. You want to manage it or you want me to do it? Just, yeah, that's the button you put.
All right, perfect. All right, good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? Thank you for having me back. I guess last year's did not go completely off the rails, so no, it really is always great working with Mike and the chamber. I deal with the statewide chamber. Mike Egginton's here, so I mean, it really, for NJ Biz, invaluable resources, and always great to be down here. As Mike said, I mean, I personally am a fan of Atlantic City. I root for this area. I think it is a critical cog in this state. I hope my coverage reflects that. I really believe as this area goes, so does the state, but there are certainly challenges. There's a lot going on just kind of broader economically. There's been some crazy news this week down here, which is kind of clouding over some things. But I think there's a lot of issues to talk about. But we have a great perspective on this panel. We have federal representatives, state representatives, Stockton representatives. So I think we'll get a good kind of different blend of viewpoints about the region. So I'll start with you. We'll go down the line, just talk about, a little bit about what you do and how, from your purview, how you approach your thinking about this area.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Very honored to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Rio. I work in the research department at the Philly Fed. I'm primarily a researcher, doing research on labor economics and demographics, particularly for our region, which is, or our district, which is southern New Jersey, Delaware, and then most of Pennsylvania. We've been on the news a lot this week. So let me actually start with that. And before I can say anything, my bosses told me to say this, but the views expressed today are my own. So don't go around saying that the Fed said this and that. It's just my opinions, right? So unless you're living under the rocks, yes, we have started loosening up our monetary policy. So let me actually kind of walk you through about the thinking here, right? So as you all know, we have the dual mandates imposed by the Congress of maximizing employment and price stability. Much of their economic conversation from the very sort of high level has been focused on inflation for the better part of the last couple of years, right? If you look at any of the inflation measures, anecdotal evidence, soft data, hard data, et cetera, inflation has come down. Yes, things are still expensive. Yes, things are, prices are still rising, but they are rising at a much slower rate than it was last year or 2 years ago. So really, if you think about the overall sort of objectives of monetary policy, we do want to make sure that, the dollar is worth what we say it is. And so if you look at, from that perspective, yes, one part of the dual mandate, which is price stability, we're almost there. Right? So we're not quite there yet, but yeah, we're almost there. And on the other hand, if you look at the labor market statistics, and I'm sure some of my co-panelists will talk about it from the regional level, but on the level, things are actually looking fine. It's just that the direction in which we're headed has been making people nervous, right? So it is fairly clear that the labor market has been decelerating over the past 4 years. There's no secret about that. But if you look at the unemployment rate today, or if you look at the number of payroll jobs added per month so far in 2024, those are still pretty good numbers, right? So if you look at any of the, labor market numbers, we're still in a fairly healthy economy, both in terms of the inflation perspective and also from the labor market perspective. So really the thinking here to loosening up monetary policy is to make sure that we keep going, right? So our mandate is to make sure that the American economy, sort of stays on path, stays on course to our sort of, long-term economic growth. So in order to achieve that, we needed to start loosening up monetary policy. So I know a lot of you may have questions about that, and I'll be happy to answer questions afterwards. But from the sort of the federal macroeconomic perspective, that's what I'm seeing.
Very good. Bill?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's my first time, but hopefully not my last time. It depends on what I have to say today, I guess, as well. Yeah, well, sitting next to Eric. So I am the Chief Business Development Officer for Choose New Jersey. For those of you who don't know Choose New Jersey, we're an economic attraction organization, a nonprofit, so we're not a government agency. We sit outside the government, but work very closely with our friends, the Governor's Office and the EDA. I oversee international teams, so we have three offices in Europe, an office in Israel, 2 offices in India, and just this past May, we opened up our Asia Pacific Center, which is based in Taipei, but we have offices in China, Japan, and South Korea as well. And we're seeing a great deal of interest economically for the state as people learn about what programs we have, when they learn about where we're located and our talent pool. That's what's really important for them. When we talk about Atlantic County and the southern part of the state, there are certain areas that are different from the north and central, really focused on aerospace and aeronautics, on tech, and also on agriculture and ag tech. So those are all areas that, the fact that the Rutgers Food Innovation Center is here, we brought companies from Israel. So there's the global reach here, as people understand who we are and what we have, is amazing. Yesterday I was telling some folks earlier, we were in front of a group of 50 companies from India, tech companies that are doing a tour of the United States. They started in New York, came to New Jersey, going to Chicago, and then San Francisco. Afterwards, I had 5 people come up to me and say, didn't know about New Jersey, didn't know what you had, didn't know the programs that you had, didn't know about your talent. We're coming here. So they were thinking New York or they were thinking California. Now they're coming here. So it's a great story to tell, and I'm lucky I get to travel the world and tell people to come to New Jersey. It's easy to do.
And now we got 2 representatives from the Murphy administration. Eric, you are one of his top economic advisors. What are some of the things you guys are thinking about when it comes to this area?
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me, Michael. Thank you for being here. I think the governor understands that this part of the state is key to driving the state's economy as a whole. Clearly we have some industries here that are not available anywhere else in the state, and we understand that we need to invest in those industries. However, we do know that there are challenges. We also understand that economic conditions in this part of the state are, as Bill said, are significantly different from what they are in the northern part of the state. Because of that, we've had a particular focus in Atlantic City especially, but in this part of the state, in Atlantic County and Southern Ocean County and further south into Cape May. I think some of the investments that we have made over the past few years are setting us up to swing on an upward trajectory. Rio talked about the employment rate in the state overall, but the state's keeping pretty much in line with the federal rate, unemployment rate right now. We plan to keep that going. We think the investments that we're making now and over the next 16 months that we're in office are going to help drive this region over the next 10 years at least. We have people like Christina here. We spend a lot of time, the DCA commissioner spends a lot of time here. She's very invested in this city, very invested in this county. So, I think what we're doing in the southern part of the state will put us on a path to really huge success over the next couple of years. I'll let Christina talk about some of the specific things that we're doing, but I think that it's really important to keep that in mind, that you may not see it today or tomorrow, but you're going to see it in a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect segue.
So Christina Fuentes, I'm Vice President of Community Business Development. I work for the EDA. Hopefully everybody knows what the Economic Development Authority is and what we do here. I'm actually going to wear two hats today because I live in Atlantic County. I live in Galloway, so this is really personal for me. Spent 9 years at EDA, 8 years at the Casino Reinvestment Development Authority as well. So I'm very focused. I'm also, understanding the initiatives that Governor Murphy has been tasked us with, but also the funding to support. So it's really helpful to finally see that we have some support on the financial side because we've done a lot of planning. We've done a lot of this is what's needed. Ever since S11, we kind of need that redo, I would say, just because the city's changed a lot. There's a lot of people. In the summertime, it's insane how many people are here. Brigantine is so different. And I know a lot of people don't understand this, but the 08-09 crisis really hurt us down here in Atlantic County. A lot of us saw our neighbors who worked in the casinos or, going to Pennsylvania on a daily basis to work. And COVID kind of brought this new wave of people from New York and North Jersey down to South Jersey for the first time. And I feel like cities like Cape May, Atlantic City, who have these beautiful beaches and the benefit of Atlantic City having a free beach and just really rippling into our neighborhoods as well too. And there's a lot of boots on the ground efforts that has been happening probably for 10 years that is beyond just the Murphy administration, but also we have some small business owners who have been really putting in their blood, sweat, and tears, and small developers and so we're finally being able, with our Atlantic City Revitalization Fund, to support these neighborhoods. And from the EDA perspective, though, we've been receiving appropriations to support our Main Street Recovery Fund, which to this date, we've had $227 million of an appropriated fund to support our small business efforts. So what people don't understand in New Jersey, we never turned off our small business grants. A lot of other states, when they got their COVID funding from US Treasury, they were able to do their instant COVID grant because we had PPP, we had all these other initiatives that were really going through your daily support. But now our grants are helping you kind of, as a small business owner, which we know there's probably about 97% of our true businesses here in New Jersey are the sole props, the small businesses, your main streets, your small bodegas, the businesses that are really trying to survive on a daily basis. But they now have a portfolio of products that they can tap into. So if they're looking to expand their space or take a new lease, if they want to buy a building and make improvements to that building, but also understanding that it's about paying your employees a livable wage too. So we layer in these support mechanisms to really kind of tap into how do we support small businesses on a daily basis. We also have lending products, which we have a lot of our lending partners here today. So thank you, TD Bank, you're a premier lender of ours. And I saw Ocean First as well too. So, we're really trying to get the word out that we do have attractive products and we do participations with our premier lenders where we come in the back end and support that deal. We're really looking to support more Atlantic City deals because I know Fulton is a really big supporter as well too. Atlantic County Economic Alliance is always trying to advocate for us, but we have to do a better job of coming together to support these initiatives as well too. Because it's not just about us, it's about our kids, it's about their kids, and we can't keep losing these generational, they just can't keep leaving this area. And it's great if they come back and buy summer homes, but, we need them to have jobs. We need them to have, really something to feed off of. So I know Atlantic County Economic Alliance is, supporting those initiatives. We have Atlantic Care in the room that is doing that as well, too. And it's really helpful to just keep supporting the, county on a homegrown basis as well, too. And EDA is really here to support that as well too. So also, I want to advocate so much to go to our website, and if you know a small business owner, push them to our website so they can also see what's available to them. The amount of products we have today, there's 7 small business products, and it's very, we appreciate the fact that we get the governor's support, but we also need it when there's a new governor as well. We can't see the turnoff happen because this is the first time we've had this support and we really need to maintain it and keep it going. So push anybody you know to our website. They can talk to somebody, they can see the resources that are available, and I'm happy to talk to anybody as well too.
And Oliver, you have a perspective here on the ground. And that kind of takes us into the first topic of summer performance. A little bit about what you do and also how you would assess how this past summer went for the region and any trends you saw.
Sure. Thank you all for having me, Michael and Chamber. I was thinking about Christina's remarks about kind of being here for a while in the crisis of 08-010. I actually arrived in South Jersey in 2005. Gives you a sense of what I'm coming up on. It's really been kind of from a longer term perspective, and I'll get to this to the most recent summer, a very kind of remarkable almost 2 decades at this point, right? A real transformation in kind of watching the local economy. Oftentimes through lots of folks that have been here for the last couple of decades, trials and tribulations. Of course, the soon after, obviously, I arrived at this Great Recession, this major event that obviously kind of dramatically transformed certain parts of the economy. Certainly, real estate industry was deeply affected. The casino industry, of course, was deeply affected by that. And then, kind of more recently, this kind of attempt to really diversify and think hard about the longer-term trajectory, right, of this regional economy. And I was thinking about, as I was preparing for today, the very first thing that I wrote, I kind of regularly write things, tied to the state and the regional economy. This was the spring of 2006, I believe. And I was thinking about the reliance down here on the leisure and hospitality industry kind of writ large. And in many ways, the remarkable success that had brought the regional economy in many ways, but also, of course, the potential shortcomings, looking forward. And I started kind of thinking about diversification. I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about diversification ever since, right? And I know we'll get into that. As it relates to kind of the recent performance, I kind of think my early sense of looking at just the data that I kind of track on a regular basis, employment data, the casino data that comes out fairly regularly. Through roughly July, I don't have all of the August data points, but I kind of put 24 in the context of thinking about the post-COVID, right, recovery. And so 21 and 22 were very, very robust in terms of kind of a bounce back, right, for a lot of different reasons, a lot of pent-up savings, obviously, a lot of fiscal juice that was kind of, pumping through the local economy. 23, I think, surprised a lot of folks. There was a lot of worry about, maybe that it was really going to kind of, really start to slow down. 23 held up reasonably well, in my opinion. And I think 4, I was here last May, looking ahead, the Shorecast. Some of you perhaps were here last May. And my sense then was that, well, maybe 24, the summer of 24 is going to be kind of this moderation, this slowing, right? And my early sense is that's kind of what has happened. In particular, while the overall regional employment was up just under about 1% or so, this is roughly the summer months that I have available to at this point. It's also true that the key, casino hotels data that we have access to, as well as the restaurants and bars, both of those were actually down in terms of total employment levels year on year relative to what they looked like in 23. Right, and we can talk about a little bit later on, perhaps. But this is not to say that it was a horrible summer, but I think that relatively speaking, as you're looking back over the most recent ones, I think a lot of people, and I'll be interested to hear what people have to say today, seems perhaps a little bit slower than what it was. So I'll leave it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll come back down the line. Christina, what are your thoughts on how the summer went? Any particular trends you saw, challenges, anything like that?
It's nice to see people visiting in Atlantic City. I will say, though, people need to feel safe. They stick to the boardwalk, and then they're also hesitant to walk outside the boardwalk at certain hours as well, just because of some things, like they have to have that feeling. You see a lot of people sticking to Ocean and Hard Rock these days. So I think the casinos have to be a little bit more creative in how they're, I feel like everyone's falling into a niche of kind of who they're servicing, which is great, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we're all in the same city. So we really have to be comprehensive, but also the city needs to understand that people have got to feel safe. And just, making sure that, we have all the resources that are available in a beach town. supporting summer concert series, supporting, we had North to Shore. I know it's, just the second year we've done it, and there's ways to make that better, but, with the governor's support and also, additional funding that we've received, we'll have it again as well this summer. And, it's really how do we tap into it here in Atlantic City to help grow it. It's a nice brand, but also it supports, from north to south. So it's nice that Atlantic City can tap into that. But I mean, I feel good, in the area, I see a lot of good things. I just hope it can continue. That's my biggest thing of just making sure, we're marketing the area properly, bringing in the people, making sure they're not going straight down to Cape May County, because Cape May, I feel like, is killing it lately too. So it's just how do we make sure that they come here, but also, visit our other beaches, towns as well too. So I think we're on a nice, good uptrend of doing this, but also there's still improvements that can be made. I don't think we're going to sit here and say it's perfect, right? But at the end of the day, the first step is acknowledging that and then doing something working towards a positive goal.
Yeah. And Eric, any particular takeaways from the governor's office or anything to speak to some of the challenges that Christina mentioned, and any particular efforts there?
Yeah, thanks. A couple of things. I think one, I think the gaming industry had a good summer, but the city needs more than just that, right? I think we all know that and acknowledge that. We did make some investments pre-summer. The Boardwalk Fund, we put some funding into some of the beach replenishment. Some of those things that we want to attract people to come here for more than just the gaming. Those are the things that we're trying to promote. We've tried to do that. I do have a question for the professor, though. When we look at the success of this summer, sometimes, at least in our office, we like to look back to 19, because that was the last real year before COVID, and everything gets a little skewed after that. So I'd be interested, you probably don't know off the top of your head, but I don't either, if we were to compare 24 to 19 and see kind of how close we were to that, because that was a really good year for everybody, 19, I think. Yeah. And that was a year that showed that we were on an upward trajectory statewide, but I imagine, we're probably a little bit off of that. But I think that's really the barometer. I think that's what we use in our office, is looking at 19.
And Bill, any particular takeaways, things that you saw from the summer that?
Well, I can say that from our point of view, based on 2023 to 2024, we doubled the number of companies that we brought in the first 6 months of the year. And we've already surpassed the number for 2023 through the third quarter already. And that's throughout the state. I think one of the things that we look at so we look at the whole state. When I'm in the South, they always say, all you do is look at the North. And when I'm in Bergen County, they say, all you do is focus on the South. And the people in the Central say, you don't even know who we are. So I can tell you that we look everywhere. And I'm proud to say that we keep bringing companies to the South as well. And it is a focus for us. It is something that we talk about when I travel and I talk about where do you want to live and what do you want to do. We have urban centers. We have suburban centers. I say the only thing we don't have is a desert, but if you want to live near the ocean, and I even say if you want to live near casinos, and it always gets a smile, right? People, because it's one of the attributes that we talk about. And we look regionally, and I know the chamber is more regional and a focus, but we know that as New York does well, the north part of the state does well. As Philadelphia does well, the south part of the state does well. We compete with them, but 80% of the trip that we take is together. It's that last 20 that we say, come here, but we need them both to be successful. We'll take the 76ers. So from a regional focus, I think, and I know that you want to look what's going on in Atlantic City, what's going on versus Cape May, but when Cape May does well, Atlantic County does well. It's that regional focus, and that's kind of what we look at. And I think the state as a whole is doing really well. The economy is doing really well. And when people look at it from an international standpoint, they're really excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Rio, you heard some of the data points they're mentioning, and some of the trends and things they're looking at. When you look at it from the Fed perspective, what are the different aspects you're keeping your eye on?
Sure, yeah. So much has been said already by my co-panelists, so I'm not going to take too much of your time. But I just wanted to add two things. One about labor market, and the other one about price inflation, right? So one, from the labor market perspective, I mentioned that things have been decelerating, but I'm not really worried about it just yet. Why is that? Well, it's because the deceleration is not being driven by companies starting to basically cut jobs, right? So we don't see any layoffs, at least not at a massive scale. But rather, this is driven by companies having less appetite for hiring. And so one of my jobs is to talk to a lot of business owners around their district and ask them, a million questions about what's going on with their company, what's going on with their region. But, overwhelming sort of comments that I've been getting, and comparing, what I'm hearing from them this summer relative to last summer was that last summer, the overwhelming narrative was that, we got to expand. Everyone is quitting my company to, seek after, basically, 50 cents more per hour. So, it's sort of this revolving door where, we have to hire at any cost, and that's why the wages are driving up very highly. The costs are up, etc. This summer, not so much, and the reason for that is that I do think that a lot of the firms, not just in Atlantic County, but overall in our region, have really started shifting their focus from hiring new talent to essentially keeping their existing employees, right? So I've been hearing a lot from my business contacts about, yes, we could hire a new person, or we could offer them a lot of money to hire this new person, but how about we shift our focus on keeping our existing employees happy? Maybe we'll ask them to do a little bit more for a lot more pay. So if you look at just the overall sort of employment numbers, yes, a lot of people may panic that things have been being slow for the past 12 months or so. But the underlying cause of that isn't exactly something that's panic-inducing. I think a lot of the firms have realized that maybe the strategy of trying to hire somebody from outside at any cost is not really a sustainable model, and therefore maybe we should try to start offering better sort of care of our existing employees. And I hear this from essentially across the board, any industry, all across our district. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. And of course, with wages, so that means that wages are still going up, yes, but I think the days off, people jumping shifts to get 30%, 40% raises are basically over, right? So that's what we heard in 22 and 23, not so much in 24. And so just really quickly about my second point about prices. Again, last summer when I talked to these business contacts, they were saying that my suppliers are raising their rates, and therefore I need to raise my own prices to sort of pass that along to my customers. And they were able to do that without any issue whatsoever, because I think up until last summer, everyone sort of decided or expected that the price will go up, fairly high. So, there weren't much pushback from customers. This summer, that has changed completely. When I talk to almost every single one of my business contacts, they're saying that I can't raise prices anymore because, basically all my customers are saying that I'm not going to pay that price anymore. So I think there has been a huge change between last summer and this summer in terms of how sort of people view the economy. And so it's overall slowdown, but in terms of level, yeah, things are still fairly healthy. And I would say that the sort of loosening up in the inflation side is a very welcome change from the monetary policy perspective.
Absolutely. All great insights, and we'll move now to topic to tourism, gaming, and resilience. Oliver, I'll start with you on this. How can Atlantic City's tourism, gaming sectors adapt to changing consumer behaviors? Obviously, some of the things have been talked about. Mike mentioned at the top. There's the threats of regional gaming. There's already regional gaming in place in Pennsylvania and surrounding states. New York is coming. I always think when I do the gaming report, the numbers every month, I see Chairman Plus is here. It's kind of this threading the needle. The internet gaming numbers are through the roof, but obviously that reflects a changing consumer trend as the properties are diversifying. So there's a lot of kind of different factors in place. How do you kind of view that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, obviously a sea change, right, for the industry going back at least a decade or so. In many ways, when you look at just, the headline, employment headcount, it's pretty remarkable in many ways, right? You're looking at an industry that at one point I think was north of ballpark 50,000 employees or something. Today it's closer to like 20. To give you a sense, that's going back a couple of decades or so ago, like Borgata-ish, right? Entrance in '03. But the last decade or so, right, the advent, obviously New Jersey was very early to the whole iGaming thing. Sports wagering now, right, has also recently picked up. And so it's an industry that in many ways, the monopoly that kind of broke, so to speak, right, with the entrance of PA really, going back many years. Have had a kind of a profound effect on the so-called brick and mortar existence of the local operators, right? But in many ways, the response, yes, iGaming has helped, obviously, sports wagering as well, and so those two things, I think, certainly have allowed, the tax revenue to effectively recover, the industry in terms of the actual operators themselves. Most have allowed, this has played a part in helping them stabilize the industry. But at the end of the day, if you look at the year-to-date numbers through August, you look at just the brick and mortar numbers, they're basically flat, maybe a little bit south of where they were in '03 and '02. This is the challenge, right? The diversification of what goes on at the properties. I know that a lot of other folks here that can speak to this. It's a challenge, but it's also in many ways, what's interesting is that the way that the gaming industry actually is technically classified by a lot of folks that do the government data work. Casino hotels, it actually ends up in this kind of sector that's known as the accommodation sector, right? And I know that there's a lot of folks here from the convention world and stuff. So yes, it's gaming, but it's also like this very important set of assets, right? Thousands of hotel rooms that, offer a real potential, right? Regardless of whether or not we're talking about people, coming to game or not, right? And I think to Christina's point, this is what you see, right, happening during the summer. So finding a way to leverage these assets that exist in the industry, even if brick and mortar gaming, revenue per se is something that's going to probably, stabilize at this point, or certainly not be a huge source of growth over the next 5 to 10 years, is certainly a challenge and an important, dimension to the whole story's, whole regional economy's diversification, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, there's been so many like high-profile casino reinvestment projects going on. Hard Rock, perfect example. Ton of stuff going on there, and I think that's great that the properties are reinvesting themselves as part of the diversification efforts. Christina, any thoughts on how the casinos thread this changing behaviors, changing trends, and staying competitive?
I feel like, when we went through our initial economic crisis here back in, the '08 and '09, it's like with anything, it can bring good and bad things, right? I don't look as PA as like competitors because I don't know if anybody's actually been to those casinos. They're not anything similar. I don't know what the plan is for the New York casinos, what they're to look like, but the reality is people, it's not about, it's not about just going to the casino to gamble, right? Unless there's something more behind that, but it's more about an experience of getting in our car, driving down, because this is what we've done. Most of us have grandparents that got very, used to like, let's go down and play some slots and get something to eat, right? Like, this is kind of like more of a cultural thing, I want to say. Like, it's coming down because the weather's nice and, just having more of an experience of walking the boardwalk, getting the ocean air. And that's the difference that I don't feel like we tap into and market it so well, right? Like, I think we really need to, I do think it's going to have an impact, don't get me wrong, if New York does get gaming, but we'll see what it looks like, I think. And at the end of the day, if our big brand names like Hard Rock are behind that, Hard Rock funnels their customers from Fort Lauderdale into AC from, Fort Lauderdale, like it's a national type of thing. Where these casinos that are bigger brand names are taking care of their customers in a more holistic experience that I don't think us as normal people kind of experience, and see, but behind the scenes of their operations, like they're doing what they have to do to keep their customers coming back on a regular basis. And it's also about the shows, it's the entertainment, it's the food and beverage. There's a lot of, people who work in these food and beverage outlets as well too. But I think, Atlantic City has that kind of trend towards it. And, if we can keep maintaining what we're doing and keeping our customers happy and keeping them coming back for this experience, that's what will always give us this advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric, how does the governor's office view kind of this subject and the challenges that were mentioned?
Yeah, a little different spin than Christina's point. I think we recognize now. I think we know mostly that online gaming is up pretty significantly.
Yeah, just set a record this past report. Yeah.
Society's changing, right? And especially post-COVID, society's changing. I think, the industry and the city is going to have to change with that. So the way that we look at it from our office, Governor Murphy likes to talk about an innovation economy. And we're investing very heavily in that, in different sectors, including gaming and including some of, strategic innovation centers that we're doing all over the state. Some of those things, some of those ideas and some of that innovation, I think is going to have to get to Atlantic City pretty soon to sustain and to maintain the success of the city, because, society's changing quicker, I think, than we all want it to, and it's really hard to keep up. And I think, I can say from our perspective, from the governor's office perspective, that, we're a willing partner to work on those things and to come up with some of those strategic plans on how to help to innovate the industry to keep up with the trends and to keep up with the customers, because it's great that we have accommodations and we have the hotel industry and I guess speaking on that, 2 years from now we have the World Cup. We are promoting, and I'm sure most of you in this room know this, but we are promoting Atlantic City as a suburb of Philly for their games for the World Cup. So we want this city to be successful off of Philadelphia because this is a natural connection. So I know the host committee was down here the other day meeting with a group to try to talk about plans for the next year and a half before that comes. We are trying to make sure that we invest as much as we can here. We also want to talk about some of that innovation.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm going to come to economic diversification
Yep.
after we wrap here, because that's actually a perfect segue. Bill, I just want to get your perspective though on the casinos. When you go out and pitch New Jersey and this area to other ventures, other organizations, what are you hearing? What's the pitch? What are some of the feedback?
So we don't do tourism and gaming as sectors that we lean into. I think what you have to understand is that it's all part of the ecosystem. And so people look at that when they're making choices about where they're going to locate. The other thing I want to make mention of is that these are not short-term projects. All of the things that we talk about take years to implement and to see the results of. I know that if I do a trip to India, we did a trip in India in 2019, we're still seeing results of that, right? So we met with folks over there that we met with this week. So it's not a short-term project, and so the innovation centers, I know the aerospace one that was just announced, that's going to come online, and it's going to take time, right? It's not going to, we will see what happens out of that. But it's not a short-term. You're not going to see it in the next 3 or 6 or 9 months. But it takes a long time for that to develop, what that looks like when we talk about AI and all of these other things from an innovation standpoint. It's lengthy. So I know it's hard to say, to preach patience, but that's kind of what we have to do.
And Ria, your thoughts on just the resilience of the casino industry as things are kind of changing and evolving pretty quickly? Like Eric mentioned, the world is changing very rapidly.
Yeah,
for sure.
Not just about the gambling, I guess, industry or casino industry, but in general, I think one of the many things that we learned through the COVID and subsequent recovery period is that both consumer preference has changed a lot over the past 4 years, and some of that came back over the past couple of years, but some of that may not return. So there's that consumer preference piece that may have changed. And then also during COVID, a lot of businesses had to come up with innovative ideas to sort of survive, right? So one thing that really popped into my mind is that every time now you try to go to a hotel and check in, they might ask you to just check in yourself using a tablet instead of having someone come and check you in. So once those companies make that type of investment, it's going to be very hard for them to get rid of that. So again, coming from this monetary policy perspective of what does that do to employment market? Well, one is that maybe the sort of permanent level of hiring in this particular industry might have gone down a little bit because of the sort of great investment in this kind of technology. And secondly, when they hire people, they might want different kind of skill sets. So that has changed a lot. And then again, going back to my sort of different conversations with businesses, I know when I talk to different businesses, one thing that they learned is that maybe they were able to do their job very efficiently without, for example, traveling, right? So a number of firms have told me that their travel budget has been cut basically permanently, right? So again, when thinking about this particular region and how important things like conventions and different sort of large-scale events are, that really has an impact to the regional level. So we haven't seen that yet showing up in the numbers, but long-term perspective, that's something that we need to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we touched on the public safety a little bit earlier, so I wanted to jump to economic diversification since it was starting to kind of come up. And Bill, I'll come back to you on this point. And you mentioned in your open about agrotech, aero. What are talk a little bit about some of the things you're pitching in those sectors and any others that you're pitching around when you take your meetings.
So we cover 7 different sectors, and so it's advanced manufacturing, financial services, technology, life sciences, gaming, and clean energy, and film and television. Film and television has really become a big one.
Yep.
We were just up in Toronto at the Toronto Film Festival, and we have great feedback. And it's not just the studios, but it's people looking to film. And there are great scenery here that people can tap into. We talk about that. The diversity of the state is something that we talk about. So when you're talking about economic diversification, the diversity of the state, I think we kind of take it for granted, but other states around the country don't have our diversity. And when people are looking to locate their companies here, they're really happy about that. So no matter where we travel to, we can say, you're gonna find folks like yourself living in our state. We're proud to say that. You're gonna feel comfortable here. You're gonna find people who pray the same way you do. You're gonna find food that you're familiar with, people who think the same way you do. That is one of the huge assets when we talk about it. So economic diversification comes out of that, right? So we're seeing all different types of companies that are looking to come, people with different backgrounds. And the fact that New Jersey is so welcoming, that we have the best education system, that we have great talent. We have, and I don't know if everybody knows this, we have more engineers and PhDs per capita than anywhere else in the world. And so having that talent base, there was a company in South Jersey, I just forgot, they've hired 53 PhDs in the last year and a half. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be coming here, and that's what people are seeing. So we're seeing it in all different sectors. So I think you will see more and more of that happen, and again, it takes time.
Yeah.
But we're out there pitching it.
Absolutely. Now, you started talking about some of these efforts. Any particular, innovation, and I write all the time about that.
Yep.
Any particular sectors that you're happy with where the progress is, and any that are like really an area of focus as you move forward?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch. I think the investments that we're making in especially these strategic innovation centers. So we're looking at the Helix in New Brunswick, which is focused on life sciences, right? That is going to probably be the first major one stood up with an actual building. We have a combination of, we have both RWJ Barnabas, we have Hackensack Meridian, we have Rutgers, Princeton, J&J in that facility. So that is going to be the key marker in New Brunswick. So that strategic innovation center for life sciences, I think, is going to be huge. We just came out of a meeting yesterday afternoon with Princeton on the AI hub. So we're putting significant resources into standing up an AI hub. We're working with a few corporate partners right now. So it's a combination of EDA, Princeton University, and we're looking for corporate partners right now. We have a few that we're talking to, and we think we're probably going to be ready to make an announcement in the next 6 weeks or so on that, and that's going to be huge. We think that we took a trip to Silicon Valley. When was that? In April, maybe. We went out to Silicon Valley, met with most of the tech companies. We pitched them on the idea that New Jersey should be the East Coast hub for tech. We should be the East Coast Silicon Valley. All of them bought into it. They said that's a great idea. New York doesn't have to own the market on everything. So we have, again, the talent. Princeton is a great partner to have on this project.
And the administration also announced the Aerospace Innovation Center.
The Aerospace Innovation Center. So in addition to film, when we were in Canada, we also met with a company or two relating to aerospace investment. So, those conversations are ongoing. I think I got an email from them this morning, actually. So those talks are coming along. So I think the more that we invest in these innovative technologies and innovative industries, I think the better we're going to be. On the film side of it, I mean, I think you probably all know that's a passion of the governor's. We have Netflix coming in. We're working with them every day. We have Lionsgate being built in Newark, and we have 1888, which is going to be kind of the governor likes to call it a shopping mall, but it's basically they rent out the stages to anybody who wants to come and film. A stat yesterday, talking to the First Lady, there was a stat yesterday that we got from MPA. New Jersey right now currently has 12 major films being filmed in the state. The next closest state is 7. So we are really peaking right now. We don't even have a studio built yet. So when those studios get built, the economic advantage that's going to come out. I know we have one down here on the boardwalk also. When those movies and those studios are stood up, I think that's going to be a huge boon for this state. We're really excited about everything that's coming along.
I know the Film Ready NJ program has been successful with helping towns and municipalities, counties learn what it takes to actually house a production, and this area has been a prime example of that.
Yeah, and look, this is a prime spot for it, right? If there's going to be investment in that industry, especially, this is the area for it. I think that there's a lot of untapped potential, and I think as North Jersey gets more congested and some of these studios see the cost of property there, I think they're gonna start to look down here for some of the studios.
And Christina, any particular of the non-gaming sectors down here that are either thriving or that you think are primed to thrive? Any thoughts on that and particular efforts from EDA?
I mean, in Atlantic County, we support a lot of our small businesses, but there's always more to support. We focus on manufacturers, obviously, but there's a lot of prime real estate, and I feel like we could do a better job of marketing, help pulling some of these companies down into South Jersey. I think my biggest concern is really the jobs, right? So as we're sitting here talking about, how things are stabilizing, I think in Atlantic County, we have a different perspective on some things. Because it's hard for the small businesses to actually find employees. It's hard for them to actually tap into these resources, and I think there needs to be probably a different approach of how do we funnel high school, college kids into these businesses, and how do we train them up? Some of these high schools have magnet programs for engineering, computer science, but how do we help teach them beyond that, right? And how do we help them kind of connect them to jobs? And how we teach our small businesses how to pull those, internships or something like that to just help grow this economy down here. I think it kind of needs to be in parallel. So whether, that ties into your strategic initiatives, Eric, right? So that's the main goal of that. Mm-hmm. However, that's what we really need down here to be able to do those things. So I think when, you shouldn't have small businesses closing because they can't find employees, and yet we experience that down here. So it's kind of like a catch-22. I'm daughter of small business owners who have to pay extra just to attract people down in Cape May. And they'll travel from Atlantic County down to Cape May to work. And so, this just is what it is down here, though. I think we don't have major transportation
that's kind of always an overarching challenge, right?
Yeah, but that's just the reality of it. So I think we need to be mindful of the reality that we deal with in Atlantic, Cape May County, Cumberland, Salem, there's challenges here. And I do think that there's a lot of opportunity. It's just getting also to cities to tap into sites that are available, how to connect them to EDA or build, to talk about like how can we help attract, and then attract those jobs as well too.
And if I could just add
Yeah.
one thing onto that, and having Stockton here, I think is a huge advantage in developing that talent. The challenge is keeping them here, right? I think a lot of the students will graduate and then they'll go either to another state or up north where they think there are better paying jobs, right? I think keeping them here is a trick. It's really hard to do. We've had this problem in the state for a long time. Out-migration is a problem. We spend a lot of money to educate kids. We put them through good schools. They go to Rutgers, they go to TCNJ, they go to Stockton, they go to all these great schools, and then they leave the state and go somewhere else. It's been a problem for a long time. I don't think any of us have figured out the solution yet. But we understand that having this physical presence here is huge for this area, and we really appreciate the efforts and the endeavors that are going into making this. A lot of innovative stuff is coming out of this campus also. So, thumbs up to the president and the faculty.
And there were two areas that I wanted to mention that we haven't really touched on: clean energy, which I think is not, and it's not just wind, right? We've got a hydrogen project that we're working on as well in consortium with Pennsylvania and Delaware, and another one is photonics. And this is an up-and-coming area where people probably don't think about it, but every day photonics impacts you all have your phones, that's a photonics, right? And we have so much small businesses around photonics, especially in the southern part of the state, that you probably don't know or think about. And it's an area that we're really focusing on as well, as certainly from our standpoint that I think we're working very closely, again, with Delaware and Pennsylvania and New Jersey on how do we improve that in this area. So when you talk about diversification, those clean energy and photonics are another area.
And kind of marrying those two issues, these innovative technologies, it's also the supply chain. Like those small businesses that are in the supply chain can take advantage of EDA's programs. They're probably not thinking that way because they think they're a tech company, but they still could qualify, right? Like you all in this room should get the word out that these programs are available. And no matter what the industry, no matter what the sector, I think it's important that you guys go out and pitch some of these programs for those small businesses, regardless of what industry they're in.
Oliver, your thoughts on how how this region has diversified or not diversified?
I'll make a few points on this. One, to the comment that was made earlier, I do think it's important to recognize, as frustrating as it oftentimes is, this kind of structural change doesn't happen in 3 months and 6 months. It goes well beyond. I know there's a lot of folks from the Alliance here and other folks that work on this constantly. It's very, very difficult, right? The story that you want to say, oh, we're just going to diversify and someone wants a silver bullet. It doesn't happen that way, right? There are workforce development, issues that are associated with it. There's all sorts of zoning that, there are so many layers to this that have to come into play. And so it is kind of a long slog. It makes it frustrating. And for the folks that are like living on the ground, right, it's like, it's now, right? Which is obviously understandable. Someone mentioned, obviously, Stockton, right? The state has obviously made a huge investment, right, over the last handful of years. Meds and eds, seems pretty obvious that this is certainly part and parcel of an attempt to push the economy along the diversification path. And then the last thing I would add is that, as it relates to high tech and manufacturing, this is so important, right, for the long-term regional economy, in my opinion. I oftentimes kind of think about gaming as an export, right? This is kind of the weird stuff that economists do. But like when you kind of think about like what is it a regional economy actually producing? You say, well, for 40 plus years, AC before the kind of monopoly dam broke, so to speak, right? You were exporting an entertainment commodity, to Christina's point. And so the question is, if you can't then guarantee like continued success on the basis of the enormous amounts of investment required to get people to come, which of course you want to still have, as you think about growing, right, the manufacturing base, these IT, finding a way to actually tap something that can be access a much larger market, right, is hugely important, right? Because you can get jobs here, but those jobs then don't become contingent upon every single time we need so many people to actually step foot, right, in County X, whatever it is. And so that's kind of important. It's easier, obviously, said than done, but that to the extent that we've seen some decent movement and success in the last handful of years, especially around aeronautics and some of these I think hold real important long-term payoff potential.
Absolutely, and you mentioned Eds and Meds, and Eric mentioned the Helix project. I mean, this facility is beautiful. You got Atlantic carried here. I mean, I don't see any reason why something like that couldn't happen in this area. I mean, it just kind of just needs the buy-in and the kind of accelerant.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing we don't want to do is dilute the effectiveness of those strategic innovation centers. We are talking about a few others potentially coming online, and I think we have 5 on our list right now. 3 of those 5 are South Jersey based. So, more to report on that probably in the next couple months. But I think we are looking at additional strategic innovation centers in the southern part of the state.
And Rio, any thoughts on just economic diversification in this area?
Just to echo what's been said already, right? So it's not like, I agree that these changes don't happen overnight, but we are seeing some diversification already, right? So in preparation for this panel, I was looking at the employment data again, and back in 1990, about 50% of employment in Atlantic County were in the leisure and hospitality sector. Today, that's about 35%. So in the span of about 30 plus years, we have slowly but surely, been diversifying. So again, just to echo Oliver's point, you might be frustrated because, you see that every day, but it's not like the change isn't happening. It just takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're kind of winding down on time as we hit into some of these other things. I want to get to our kind of last point about long-term vision, regional collaboration. I'll start with you, and then we'll come down the line again. How can Atlantic County collaborate with neighboring regions to create a more economic ecosystem, and just how bringing the city, the county, everything kind of together?
Yeah, so I'm going to offer like a very macroeconomic perspective on this, right? So going back to my sort of like, introductory to macroeconomics sort of class, when you sort of strip down everything, if you think about what a long-term economic growth is, it really only depends on 2 things. One is labor force growth, and the other one is productivity growth, right? So labor force growth side has been a challenge for much of New Jersey, particularly in this area where, if you look at the demographics, we tend to be a little older, right? So we have a little bit more retirees than some of the other communities in the state, and not to make anything sort of sound worse, but a recent survey done to a bunch of Egg Harbor High School students, about 400 students, and they asked them, after you graduate, how likely are you to stay in the area? Of the 400 students, 11 said highly likely. So again, I think this kind of ties back to earlier comments about how do we sort of keep young talent in the area. Of course, I don't have an answer to that, but again, thinking about long-term economic growth, labor force growth, and productivity growth are really the 2 things that really move the needle. In terms of productivity growth, I think the state and the region are doing the right thing by investing in different programs, investing in different technology. So I think that part is it's going to take some time, but I think that's going to work out eventually. It's just that, how do we keep people and how do we have people, working here and living here, I think is going to be a major challenge. And I think that's really beyond the scope of monetary. And I'm not saying, this is not my job, so I don't really.
No,
I'm just saying that, it does take time, and there's not a one size fits all type solution.
Absolutely. And Bill, I know your organization is huge on collaboration. I mean, the most recent trip to Canada, perfect reflection of that. Obviously, working side by side with the administration. Any thoughts on the collaboration for this region and any long-term vision kind of thoughts?
I think regional collaboration is important. 2 or 3 times a year, Choose New Jersey brings all of the economic development folks so every county has different economic development teams. Some cities have them. We bring them together. I know the Business Action Center does this on a quarterly basis. I spoke to them, and it's more about learning, not competing against each other, but learning best practices. What are you doing that's successful? What is it? How can we work together? because I know people try to tend and say, oh, I want them here, right? But just having the company here doesn't mean that the people outside the county, are going to benefit from it. So if there's somebody in Cape May that they have folks that work here, you mentioned that already. So it's a regional collaboration I think is more important in getting, we try to get these economic development folks to talk more and more together because I think they've been more siloed. And the more collaboration we see that, it's the same thing about diversification, right? When you have different minds saying different things, then you get better ideas. And that's really what we're trying to promote.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric, I know in covering your administration, the Murphy administration, day in, day out, I mean, public-private partnerships are a huge hallmark of what you guys are doing. How do you kind of view that trend and how it relates to this region and, for the long-term vision?
Yeah, I mean, so I think when the governor came into office, we had some fiscal difficulties that we had to dig out of. Doesn't need to be blamed around. It was mostly due to the economy, but I think a lot of the investments we're making now, and I think our focus on public-private partnerships, the state cannot be successful just as a state entity, right? Like we need to work closely with business, with industry, in order for the state to be successful. The governor's mindset on this is that, and this is why he's leaning so heavily on these strategic innovation centers, is that there's a lot of talent in this state. One of the ways to retain that talent is to invest long-term in these new industries. In doing so, it's his belief, and we had this conversation 3 days ago, is that he is really convinced that, so I'll use the AI hub as an example. The companies that get birthed out of that AI hub, those are what are going to sustain the state long term. Those companies in each of those sectors that we're focusing on, the new companies that come out are what's going to solve the state's long-term deficit problems.
Like a CoreWeave is a prime example.
CoreWeave is, listen, first half of this year, and this is an unbelievable statistic that none of us could believe until we saw it, New Jersey was number 3 in the country in venture capital investment in the country. One of the major reasons is because of CoreWeave, they got a $7 billion influx of funding, but behind New York and California, New Jersey was number 3 in venture capital investment. That's huge. That is going to convince a lot of other companies to invest in this state and invest in corporates in this state because they're going to see that a company that's willing to put that kind of capital invested in this state means that they have confidence. We've met with CoreWeave, a dozen times. Jersey guys grew up here. There's a company that has GPUs, which are the processors for AI. They have basically cornered the market, and the conversations we've had with them, they understand that they have a corner on the market, but the industry is going to catch up with them eventually. So they're trying to get out in front as much as possible. Those are the kind of strategic thinkers that we need in industry in this state. So, we are very optimistic and very bullish on the state going forward because we really think that, these investments now that we're making are going to yield huge results. And we're okay with the next administration or the administration after that taking credit for it. Great. As long as we know that we planted the seeds here and they're going to grow in the next decade or so.
Absolutely. And Christina, I know EDA works, again, same thing, a lot of different stakeholders involved, a lot of partnerships. How do you kind of view the collaboration and how vital it is for this long-term sustainability of this region?
I feel like for us, it's really so important to get the city, the county, the state all swimming in the same direction so we can be effective at what we're doing. EDA has stepped in, CRDA has lost some funding, so we stepped in to administer some programs for them. I think in the next couple of years, just because the funding that supported these programs is timestamped for the end of 2026, so in the orange loop, you're gonna see a lot of kind of influx in these redevelopment projects that are gonna do the infill that's necessary in that neighborhood. To really, you're gonna see the connection of the dots, but also it helps try to attract the people off the boardwalk and into the neighborhoods, into the small businesses, get them walking more. But really, the catalyst behind that was the Opportunity Zone funding. I think a lot of that got missed because people didn't understand it. And in Atlantic City, we had 4 of those, and they were all on the boardwalk. And that really attracts a lot of dollars that people haven't really seen yet because the projects, it takes time to do this, as everybody's stated several times. But you're going to start seeing, like, we just approved like 6 projects within one neighborhood. And so within that orange loop, even though it's 3 blocks, you have St. James, Tennessee, and New York, you're going to see, and I'm, excited about this because it's been a while. It's been a long time. We talked about, when I was at CRDA, we talked about a lot of times the lack of funding. We got the funding and now it's invested. So, but I also think, having us all, they have to go for construction permits. They have to get zoning from CRDA. They have to do all these, the land use and everything. But we all have to work together to achieve those and to make sure that they have a good experience to be able to come back and do another project again, and then another one from that, because they also have friends they're talking to. And so as those friends talk to other people, then, they're like, hey, is this open still? Could we get this grant still? And, unfortunately, it will stop because that's the way it is. But it's a nice kind of uptick to finally see that we haven't seen in a while. And I'm hoping that, on the local level, we do see this, positive impact within the next couple of years, which is very low-hanging fruit. It's not the big projects sometimes. It's the small, low-hanging fruit projects that can have such an impact on how we perceive the city,
Yeah,
and then that grows the county.
The container project is a pretty cool
Yes.
project. As I was kind of like
Yeah.
preparing for this, I was reading more about that. Kind of a cool project, reflecting what you're saying.
And it also ties into food insecurity as well too.
Yeah.
So there's a ripple effect that's happening very much in that Orange Loop neighborhood that's really impacting. We just approved a historic tax credit for one of those buildings as well. We've attracted a developer from DC as well. There's a lot of positive impact that's happening in the city, and hopefully soon everybody can start seeing it, but I know it takes time, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oliver, I'll close with you on this topic.
That's fine. I know you were probably just told to move along, right? Right? So it's fine.
No, actually, no, we're still good. Thoughts on just long-term vision, collaboration?
I don't have much to add. I think it's very obviously hard to not compete, whether it be county or municipalities, and I do think that's obviously hugely important to make sure everyone is, trying to row as much as we possibly can in the same direction.
And we have an audience question. Philadelphia has been using tax abatements to boost development. Could a similar approach work here? What kind of tax incentives might stimulate economic growth in our region? Anybody like to? Eric.
Could it work? I saw you looking at me, so. Could it? I guess it could. We are in competition with Philadelphia at the moment, not with Atlantic City, but I think we probably need more than that. I think it's just not tax abatements. We need more than that here to attract those businesses, but we have to identify what those sectors are first that are non-gaming sectors, right? That's what we have to target. I also am not confident that the city could afford to do that. So.
But I will say most of the companies that we're bringing in, or the companies that are staying in the state, we're seeing really big companies stay in the state.
Yeah.
They're not getting incentives.
True.
There's a reason they're staying, right? Why is Johnson & Johnson? Why are all these companies? Why is Bank of America, building, a huge interest?
Prudential, PSC&G. Right?
All of these companies are here in the state and they're staying, and they're not using incentives.
Right.
And we're attracting people. And there are some EDA programs, but most of the companies don't take advantage of them until they're here. A lot of them are for when they're here. So the attraction part of it. When I first joined Choose, the first thing they said was, we don't have incentives. And I said, we don't need them. We don't. And we do a really good job without them. So that would be my response.
Yeah.
Rio, any thoughts on?
I don't have much to add to that.
I also, just a personal perspective as someone who's administered tax credits as well too, it's not always about the tax credit, because a corporation, for their bottom line, yeah, it helps them, but that's also the corporation that will leave when that number doesn't look good on their financials, right? So it's also about, like, in the Camden waterfront, how we grew those corporations who now are rippling into their communities as well, supporting their small businesses, where, the casinos could do something like that as well. But you want to make sure that the company and the corporation, it's not just about coming here, because we're not the only state that offers these tax credits. Plenty other states do this to attract these big major corporations. But it's also about sustaining them and keeping them here and having, being good partners to them and making sure they have employees to hire. It's like that
And the
ripple.
supports when they're here.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, there's a big Rivian plant that was going in Georgia. They got hundreds of millions of dollars. They haven't put a shovel in the ground yet.
Yep.
Right, they're not seeing the results of that. So they're making they make big splashy announcements, North Carolina does this, but then they're not building anything, and those jobs don't come. People come here, and when people come to us, and if they're first, what do you have to give me? I said, that's not the question you should be asking, right? If that's your first question, we're not the state for you, right? Here's the reasons you should be coming.
I think we're out of time. All right. Well, thank you all, first of all, for sitting here paying attention. A great audience and a great panel. I really appreciate all great insights on all these different things. So hopefully we hit on a bunch of different topics today. So thank you very much. Thanks, Mike.
No, Matt, thank you for doing such a great job with our panel. And can we have a round of applause again for our exceptional panel tonight? They are incredibly busy in their schedules, as you can imagine, and for taking their time to come down. We are greatly appreciated. I made a tremendous amount of notes from this. And I can't thank you enough for coming down and taking the time to meet with us. I want to thank our sponsors again today, TD Bank, Atlantic Care, Atlantic City Electric, Stockton, great facility as always hosting these events, Town Square Media. A couple things that are coming up, Business Excellence Awards. Our nominations are open. If you know somebody, there's 8 different categories. There's a top 20 under 40. Please make a recommendation and nomination. It's right on our website. Additional events, we have our next membership orientation on October 8th at 8:30 in the morning at ACIT. Multi-association mixer. These are the mixers they're working with Margate, Brigantine, Ventnor, Summers Point. We're all collaborating to bring people together. They've been tremendously successful. The next one's in Brigantine on that evening of October 8th, and everybody's favorite event, Atlantic City Restaurant Week, October 6th and 11th. If you want to get into a good restaurant, you better make it now, because those times are filling up. I took about half of them. Again, thank you all for coming tonight. If you have any questions, we'll be around. I'll be around certainly for a little bit afterwards. Happy to help. But again, thank you so much to our panel, and thank you to Stockton for hosting us today. Have a great day.